Good morning. It's a beautiful winter morning here in my city, out in the woods back behind my workplace. I like coming out here on my breaks often just to get a breath of relative fresh air, marginally fresh air, but just to be out, amongst the trees and see at least a little bit of green. I know it's winter time, but it's refreshing. So I wanted to record this out here. And it gives a little privacy too, because even though I'm putting this on YouTube, I still feel a little weird recording it in front of other people, which is kind of ironic, but that's me. But also, I don't want sound interference, other than these awesome birds that are joining our conversation. And speaking of conversation, that is my topic today. So my title, I decided to make it a little fun, like, say what now? It's my title for today's video. And yesterday, I just was thinking a lot about human conversation and about communication and about how easy it is for us as humans to misunderstand someone else's intent. Like, even when we're trying our best to be a attentive and empathetic listener, we may still misperceive, misunderstand, or misremember, that other person's remarks or what emotions they seemed to be portraying, and our brains can register that by watching their faces, their body language, by listening to the tone of their voice, which is one of the reasons why I decided to do videos in addition to vlogs or podcasts, because I think it's important for human communication for you guys to be able to see my face in addition to hearing my voice. I think that makes for a more effective communication, generally speaking. It depends on the topic. There are some topics that are very precise and detail-oriented where it might be best served to have a book, which is why we have a lot of books, I think. And I love reading books. Anyway, it's beside the point. So I'm speaking more specifically of, I think of general communication, but I think in particular verbal communication between people. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still learning how to do that. For years, I would have considered myself an introvert. I don't know that I call myself that anymore necessarily. I don't know if that term is even helpful, like introvert, extrovert. I think people's degree of social interaction ranges on a spectrum. Sometimes depending on what season of life they're in, like what mental health issues they might be having in that time. It's possible, I think, that personality may play a part into that, just broadly speaking. But I think it's more helpful to look at introversion or extroversion on a spectrum rather than, oh, he's an introvert, or, oh, she's an extrovert, etc. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that issue. So, interpersonal communication. Something I'm realizing, just in communications with other people, and honestly, in talking to some people about some of the vlog topics I've even put out there, and just having in-person conversations, I'm realizing how easy it is for that other person, and I'm not saying anything negative about anybody on this. I'm just talking about, our tendencies as humans, just because of the way our brains work. It's easy to grab on to, maybe just one concept that resonates with us for whatever reason that day. Maybe it resonates with us emotionally or intellectually. Maybe it's something we've been curious about and that topic resonates. And sometimes we start thinking about it while the other person is still talking, and we miss a lot of what they said. We miss the context, and we're just thinking about that one idea that resonated with us. And then we jump back into the conversation, and we're still thinking about that idea that resonated, but the other person has moved on and is talking about something else now, and now you have to both reorient yourselves in the conversation. So I thought of a term that might be helpful in this. At least it's going to help me, I think. I like it. It's touch point. Obviously, I didn't come up with that word, but just in this context, it's helpful for me to think of that, like to think of it both like metaphorically and abstract, literally, like to use, like, or let's say this tree branch over here, or imagine a rock as your touch point. You're sitting here with me, we're having a face-to-face conversation, and we each have our own touch point, or maybe we've agreed upon, a common touch point. So when we're having, say, a debate about maybe an intellectual debate, or, just we're discussing, say, an issue that's important to both of us, and we're reasoning our way through it as we talk to one another, and we're trying to understand the other person's perspective, and hopefully vice versa. We're trying to understand one another, we're trying to communicate effectively. I think it can be helpful to either have an agreed upon touch point, and I think a synonym for touch point could be source of authority. Like if you're, like what do you base your ideas on? What do you base your opinions on? What's your source of authority? Or you could use the word foundation, like what's your foundation for that? Those are just a couple of examples. But I do like the word touch point, because it's a little less threatening, I think, but it communicates a similar idea. So let's say that the two of us were having a conversation about the latest theories on cancer treatment. It's an issue that's relevant to many of us. But let's say that we're both amateurs, but we have done a little bit of research. And so let's use two examples. First, let's say we have a common touch point. So let's say that we both recently read an article written by the American Cancer Association, or posted on their website. We both recently read the same article, and so that's our touch point for this conversation, or I should say maybe that's our common touch point for this conversation. Like we both read that, so we're discussing the ideas or the data that is in that article. Now let's, bring this home a little more personal. Let's say that article dealt with some ethical issues related to the treatment of cancer. When we get into interpersonal ethics and morality, this is where discussions can get rough, particularly if the two people conversing with one another have different moral touch points, or different, they recognize different authorities for a moral opinion, or a moral argument. And that's where, this is a common example. Let's say a Christian is arguing with an atheist about a moral issue. I'm not going to get into the specifics of this argument, but just for an example, birth control. It's a hot topic. There's a lot of debate on both sides of that issue. And atheists can have a range of opinions. Like they're not a monolith any more than Christians are a monolith. People have individualized opinions. But that being said, it's probably fair to assume that the atheist is going to have a different they're going to recognize a different authority, or they're going to have a different touch point for their moral system of belief than the Christian is. The Christian, if they hold to like the general precepts of Orthodox Christianity, their touch point is most likely going to be the Bible and or church tradition, or the opinions of church leaders, etc. But probably the foundation is going to go back to the Bible, and in some fashion for the Christian. And for the atheist, there could be several different options for the atheist source. But let's say, for instance, just to throw an example out there, maybe the atheist really likes the United Nations statement on human rights. I don't know if that relates specifically to the issue of birth control. It might. I haven't read it in a little bit, but let's just say that is a source for like an ethical system or an ethical that particular atheist really likes. So maybe that's what that atheist is referencing, and the Christian is referencing the Bible, or maybe a particular biblical scholar's opinion on this moral issue. Let's just, someone like, say, C.S. Lewis or Alvin Plantinga, William Lane Craig, what have you. There's other Christian philosophers out there as well that think through moral issues. Those are just a few that come to my mind. And and like I said, let's say the atheist is using the UN statement on human rights, and maybe something written by, say, David Hume, perhaps, just for some ideas. I'm not saying I'm an expert on these topics in general, but so you get in there's discussion between atheist and a Christian. The common touch point is that they both read an article written, put out by the American Cancer Association that is dealing with the ethics of birth control, and maybe the article was trying to present a particular side, or perhaps it wasn't reaching a conclusion but was just presenting both sides. Either way, it addresses the interpersonal ethics and the morality of birth control. So the atheist and the Christian are arguing against that. So their common touch point that they may need to come back to several times in the argument is the article. It's like, and maybe they might have a disagreement about what the article said. So you might be helpful to have the article there. It's like, well, let's look at it. Like, okay, I wasn't remembering it quite right. This is what the article actually said. So you have that touch point right there that you can both come back to, so that you don't get into an unnecessary dispute over what it actually said. Like, let's just have it right here in front of us so we can check our memories, because human memory, it's not thoroughly unreliable, but it's less reliable, obviously, than if you have the document sitting right in front of you. It may also be helpful, depending on how intense of a discussion you're wanting to have, or how lengthy of a discussion. It might also be helpful, say, for the Christian to have a copy of the Bible, or a work written by a Christian philosopher, addressing moral issues. And it might be helpful for the atheist to have a copy of, like I said, the UN statement on human rights, or I'll just throw out there's an atheist named Richard Carrier, who has written a book called, and yes, I know it's a little on the nose, he's like that sometimes, it's called Sense and Goodness Without God. So it's kind of his defense of what he calls metaphysical naturalism. It's basically his comprehensive worldview, and he's making a case for it in the book. But within the book, he definitely deals with the issue of, the broader issue of morality, interpersonal ethics, etc. So let's say the atheist is using that as a reference. So it might be helpful for him to have a copy of that book, and the Christian could have a copy of the Bible, or a book written by a Christian scholar or philosopher who's, thinking about morality in context of the Bible. So they could have those for references, in that conversation. And this is starting to sound a little bit more like a formal debate, which I think there's great value in formal debates, especially if they're done respectfully. Unlike our presidential debates, which are a disgrace in my opinion, just the format is unhelpful. That's a soapbox of mine, or it's becoming a soapbox of mine. And I'm sure any of you who saw the presidential debates this last year would understand why. It's like, we need to change the format of those things. It's not helpful, and it doesn't really tell me much about what the presidential candidates actually believe, or what the foundation is for their positions. I want to hear them make a well-reasoned argument for why they hold to a particular position, or on whatever issue you might be addressing. I want to hear them make a case for it. So let's change the debate so they actually have 10, 15 minutes at least to make a case, and then the other person can respond, etc. Just a good, healthy, formal debate. That would be so much better. Anyway, that's you get that one for free. So anyway, like I said, I think having these touch points And knowing what the other person's touch point is, can be really helpful with conversations. If you're, and I think we all do this intuitively, like when we're conversing with someone, especially about issues that can raise up a bit of emotion or that we may care deeply about, we are looking, like if we haven't met that person, or if we're not sure maybe where they stand on that issue, we're looking for clues that will tell us what their touch point is. Like, what's their source of authority? What's the foundation for their thinking? Is it just their own ideas or opinions? Have they researched it? Have they considered what experts have to say? Have they looked at the Bible? Have they looked at Christian tradition? Whatever it might be. But I think we tend to intuitively look for clues to try and figure out, like, what is their touch point? Where are they getting that from? In other words, to put it crudely, are they just pulling it out of their ass? Forgive my French, but I think that's how we feel sometimes. Like, somebody says something that we think sounds ridiculous, and we may have a thought like that. We might not say it to them. Like, if we're polite and courteous, we're probably not going to say that. Did you just pull that out of your ass? No. We're probably not going to say that to the person if we, care at all about having a reasonable discourse with them, because that would just be offensive. But we might be thinking something like that. It's like, where'd you get that idea from? That sounds crazy. So it's helpful to maybe just to ask them. It's like, well, hey, like, is that just your own opinion? Like, have you researched that? Etc. One final thing, then I'll finish up for today. I think another, I don't know if tactic is the right word, but something else I think that would be helpful in conversations, again, whether it be about politics, religion, morality, name your difficult issue to converse about, and this could apply to multiple other types of conversations as well. But if you're about to wax philosophic on a particular issue and share your opinion, and you personally know that you haven't researched that you don't know much about that topic, it's probably a good idea to preface your statement with something like, well, I haven't studied this much, but this is what I think. Or, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but this is how I remember it, etc. So that I think that's just a good way to infuse a little bit of humility into our conversations with each other. And, if you know that it's just an idea that you came up with yourself without maybe just a little bit of reflection, but not necessarily like a lot of research or, etc., then just be honest about that. It's like, I don't know a lot about this topic, but, based on the little bit I do know, here's what I think. Or you could say, if you want to get a little more formal, say, this is my preliminary conclusion based on the evidence I have seen thus far. I know that probably sounds like something I would say, which I probably would, depending on the conversation, obviously. If it's a more academic conversation, then yeah. Just regular casual conversation, maybe not. Depends on the day or the topic, because I am a nerd, so forgive me. I love language, and I love when it's used precisely. I'm not a grammar Nazi, never have been that. I'm not that kind of anal, but I do love it when someone words something really well and very precisely, and they say what they mean. I like that. And I like seeing that someone has thought through an issue, even if they haven't done a lot of research outside of their own reflection. I like knowing at least that they have done some serious reflection on an issue. And if they haven't, then I appreciate it when they admit that and say, I don't know a lot about this, but this is what I think. And speaking for myself, like, if there's a topic I don't know much about, and I'm talking to someone who I suspect may know a lot more about it than I do, it would behoove me to just ask them, it's like, hey, so what have you learned about that? Could you share? So these are just some thoughts on interpersonal communication. I think these are some guidelines that I really want to follow myself. I try to, and I hope I'm getting a little better at that as I practice more and as I just have more in-person conversations with people and more conversations online or on discourse sites, Facebook, what have you. I hope I get a little better, with each conversation and improve my skills, and in particular improve my capacity for empathy and curiosity about what someone else has learned or what someone else thinks. I really think that's important, like curiosity and empathy in human conversation. Really important. I really believe that. I really do. It's so important. If we're just waiting to make our next point and we're not really curious, or we don't choose to care about what that other person has to say, it doesn't make for good conversation. It doesn't make the other person feel cared for or heard or seen. Just take a minute, slow yourself down, try to listen to what they're saying, try to understand it, ask questions if you need to understand it better. It's like, you could even say things like, so this is what I heard, is that what you meant? Or this is how I received that. Or you could even say, this is how what you said makes me feel. Did you intend to make me feel that way? Or, something along those lines. I think bringing in those kinds of questions and thoughts to our conversations can be so helpful. So anyway, that's my talk for today. This does replace the one I had originally posted. Some of you may have seen that pop up. I made the decision to pull that video off the public blog playlist because I think it was just a little too personal. And, while I want to be personal with you all, I don't necessarily think it's healthy for me to share all of my personal life details out on YouTube. So I decided to be a little more cautious and just pull that down. So if some of you saw that and saw it disappear, that's why. So today, I'm sharing this with you, and I hope it's really helpful. So with that, I will say peace to you, my fellow humans. Be healthy and stay thoughtful.